Hi, good evening and welcome. We're going to give you guys about 30 seconds, 60 seconds to hop on so we have some viewers. Wait till the video catches up and then we'll get started. Good evening. Thank you for joining us again. This is the second of a trilogy of talks on human trafficking. Last week we had Chief Jason McFarland of the Effingham City Police Department speak on his perspective and how he deals with human trafficking in our area. Next week we're going to have Annie Shoemaker, and she runs, she's co-founder of not-for-profit Eden's Glory, and we'll speak more about that next week. But I wanted to welcome you this evening. We're honored tonight to speak with survivor, advocate, speaker, support resource, author, founder of Butterfly Dreams Alliance, and my friend Trish McKnight.
Hi.
Thank you so much. Hello.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
It's so wonderful to have you here. Trish and I have spoke for hours at length.
Hours.
Yeah.
Yes.
Really getting to know each other and just talking about human trafficking and her perspective. I wanted to give everybody who's watching a little bit of a heads up. This is a talk tonight that's probably content for those of you watching, if you're watching with your family, content for preteens and teens and up. We're going to be talking about a few heavy topics, and we just want to kind of give you the notification that you may want to step aside if you have little ones around, or use your discretion if they're viewing with you. We have a lot of people already watching, and I'm really excited about this.
Me too. Me too.
I'd like to start off with tell me a little bit about you.
Present day me. I love doing what I do. I love being an advocate. I keep learning more and more and more. There's so much new information that keeps coming to light, whether it's in policy or in trainings or what you see happening with teens and their communication. It's just amazing for me to be able to see those come full circle.
Sure.
So, I like that.
And we will speak to your advocacy. We will speak to you are now a CASA support.
Yes. We'll be
advocate.
sworn in Friday.
Oh,
yes.
That's exciting.
Yes.
So talk to us a little bit about your past and your story of human trafficking.
And it was a family facilitated human trafficking situation between my mother and stepfather. It began around the sexual abuse started around age 5, turned into exploitation at around age 11, and then turned into full-blown trafficking by the time I was 13. So, and that was my life until I finally aged away from them and left home at 17.
When you say family facilitated human trafficking, Chief McFarland spoke a little bit of that last week. Can you kind of explain to me? That's what we see in rural communities more so than, or small towns, or what we see in human trafficking more so than anything.
It most definitely is. There's in the larger cities, you have streets that that you see trafficking persons, prostitutes for lack of a better word, walking the streets. You see pimps and gangs. This is on a much deeper level and even more secretly hidden and capable with the use of technology, where the parents are actually trafficking that child. And in a recent study done by the Texas Department of Family Protective Services and just discussed, and it's on everybody's radar now, is the real truth about family facilitated trafficking, and that is that mothers are likely 65% of the offenders in those. But my mother kind of handed me over as payment for my stepfather to support her and her kids. She worked, he was a coal miner. We lived in a very small rural Illinois town, grew up there, moved around in there. I attended the same school system for 6 years. People knew me, they knew my parents. Everyone knew how awful and evil and deviant my stepfather was. Men that would come to our house for parties, pornography was involved, alcohol, drugs were involved, anything to initiate sexual interactions. And the typical cost for persons was usually the price of a couple of beers, and that was through the late 70s. So, you know.
When you were talking about your story, you said you had different levels that you broke down. Age 5 was when the sexual abuse started, and that was within the family.
Yes.
And I know that as an advocate and as a resource support, you talk a lot about child abuse.
Yes.
And then you unpacked it to be where then you were trafficked around 11.
Mm-hmm.
And that's different. That becomes
even worse, and it does progress like that in a lot of situations, because it's not typical for someone just to suddenly decide one day, oh, I'm gonna sell my kid, because that, if you think about it, it really takes a different level of disturbance to do that. And so you don't just wake up one morning and decide that, but what happens typically is that there becomes, there's a deeper deviant person, that power control situation, just to see how much they can get away with. And it progresses, the sexual abuse progresses, the violence, the control progresses. Maybe other kids are lucky and they get special gifts and special phones and special concert tickets or whatever, but mine was very violent and controlling, to the point that I was actually, at age 11, my mother actually purchased him a little brass bell. And he would ring that bell no matter what I was doing. Nobody else in the house was expected to answer that bell except for me. So it was literal enslavement in every sense of the word. But the violence and the threats were more that constant that kept me silent and kept me doing whatever it was that I needed to do to survive on a regular basis, so that I could eventually get away from them.
Sure. Do you have siblings?
I do. I have siblings. I don't have any blood, same parent siblings. They are half siblings, but I was the cook and caregiver and nurturer, and I was that person that my family kind of depended on to keep the wheels rolling. My mother placed a lot of that on me when she felt ready to go back to work, and she only worked part-time, but it was still, I knew my duties when I got home from school every day and what I had to do in order to get to school every day. It was like take my younger sister and then come home and cook dinner and clean up the mess and give her a bath and do her homework, and maybe if I was lucky about 10 o'clock at night, if my stepfather wasn't in one of his predatory moods, maybe I would have time to sit down and do my homework. It's a matter when our kids are growing up in these environments, and just because it happened to me back in the 70s, it's still happening right now today. That is so important to mention.
And Chief McFarland mentioned that to both you and I on
Yes.
different occasions, how he's been in that situation. He's been, not to your house directly,
To
but
those
he's
homes,
been to those
yes.
homes. And they see, it's about continuing that cycle of checking back with the family, checking back with the kids, and there being more people involved.
Yes.
But we'll get to that too.
Yes.
You went to school every day.
Yes, I did.
You know,
Yes.
you said that people knew you guys.
Uh,
And this is what we talk about a lot. You and we spoke about it last week. So can you unpack that a little bit for me?
Yeah, I told you in our conversation, if there's one little part of me that still holds on to a little piece of anger, and I know that in many ways I shouldn't, but in other ways, how could I not? During the worst of the years of the violent assaults and the exploitation and trafficking, I literally rotted away. I wasn't given time to bathe or taught about personal care and hygiene. So this child who attended and everybody knew in the community literally was covered in layers of filth and infected sores that had covered my skin, and my teeth were all broken in decayed, and that's the way I looked by the time I was 13 years old. And I know many people say, well, you know, why would these people want to do what they did then? I have no idea, other than it was just drunk perversion led on and initiated by my stepfather. And
I don't really know if we want to know why these people.
yeah,
you know,
right?
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, people have actually asked me that question, and it does. It makes it hit home. But the one thing that comes back to me is like, just on the surface with what they did see.
Right.
You know, barring what wasn't seen, just what they did see. So many people have the opportunity to, could have and should have, say something to someone. However, as we know, it's not really commonplace to go outside our homes and talk about what goes on inside, or air our dirty laundry, or get involved in people's business. I love rural communities because if you need your driveway plowed, somebody's going to be there. If you need groceries, somebody's going to be there. But unfortunately, if you're hurting someone in your own home or your kids, or if there's a lot of domestic violence and struggle, that's when people tend to back away.
That's none of our business.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's
a lot.
not for public knowledge. That's not our business.
We spoke about that with Chief McFarland last week too, and I'm sure I'll hear it from Annie as well, is that we can't drive home enough that see something, say something.
Yes.
And I'm amazed and concerned for my own children, you know, and anyone's children. I'm amazed to see or hear that children, it's so severe, and yet it falls through the cracks. They go unnoticed.
Repeatedly, far too often, as a matter of fact. When we look at the commonality of how offenses like this actually are common across the country, every year there are 3.7+ million reports of child maltreatment. Illinois alone, 2015, there were 100 and some thousand by the time they did their investigation to substantiate or disfound, and all of these investigations have to be thorough. It came down to only some 2,000 were sexually abused. Well, in the Congressional Statement of 2012, it says for every one report of sexual assault that is made, at least 6 others are not. That's concerning adults. If you put that where it's children, who the parents have the control to tell that child who they can talk to, what they can say, and reinforce all these negative thinking, and it's your burden, and if the family gets, you'll be taken away, and you'll never see your siblings again, all of these threats and control techniques. It becomes even more serious. We actually had in 2015, the offenders is what I found shocking, and it gives you a breakdown of the highest numbers of offenders. And for parents, siblings, and paramours were all over the 200 count, and family offenders accounted for almost 1,300, while other only accounted for 482.
Wow.
That's a huge difference.
That's a huge difference.
That's a huge difference.
And what a struggle to break into that mindset of
yes.
Someone's here to protect you. There are people to protect you.
Yes. We haven't taught kids that, sure, they hear we have rights too, and I know that my kids used to say, I'll call 911 if you hit me, and my big threat was always, well, you make sure you do. Here, use my phone, because I think they're going to support. There's parenting, and then there's abuse, and for anyone that's out there that's struggling, there's a huge difference, and I know that feeling that you're carrying. So make sure that you reach out for help, because help is available today that was not available in my time or even in my children's time.
Sure.
It's this stuff that's been booming over the past decade is so amazing and so widespread, not just throughout Illinois or just throughout the southern region, but across the country and literally around the world.
Sure. We have quicker access to information.
Yes.
But also, I think that there's a lot of more awareness of child abuse and domestic violence, and more in domestic violence cases, more women are speaking out. I know we have a lot of people watching this evening that are parts of organizations that do support victims of sexual abuse and domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
Speak to me a little bit about your advocacy and the support systems that are available now that you're...
Butterfly Dreams Alliance, the keyword there being alliance. We are a little community nonprofit based in Breeze, and our duty is to reach out and build alliances with the big resource providers that are throughout the area. And I'm also a regional ambassador for the National Association of Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, and certified human trafficking trainer and all of that. But today, it is when clients first contact, it's a matter of giving them a voice and paying attention and really letting them know that they can trust you're going to hear their voice, what their needs are. That is very important when a client calls me or I make an appointment to go see a client. After the hellos and how are yous, we sit down and begin talking. It's an ACE evaluation, which is the Adverse Childhood Experiences Evaluation. That gives me a base foundation of any underlying traumas that might still be residing. And then it's a DV evaluation and a lethality assessment. It's a safety assessment. It's a life skills assessment. Where can I best help you? And then I sit back and I say, okay, I'm able to do A, B, C, and D, but this person also needs much more of this and more of this. So those alliances, such as SAFE and SWAN and the Violence Prevention Center and Eden's Glory and so many that we've built over these past 3 years. 3 years now we have been a nonprofit. It's those people that I call and say, hey, I've got a client that needs this, and we do a warm handoff and an introduction, and get that client just as comfortable working with the other resource, and then I'm that backup plan. I'm that go-to, and I love being that go-to.
I was going to say, do you feel your experience gives you that, I'm not sure the word I'm looking for, that
inside
safe,
look?
Yeah, that safe comfort with them to
Indeed.
say, oh, you're not just somebody coming to judge my situation or me, you get it.
Yes, yeah, I've lived it. I've suffered with drugs and alcohol. I've attempted suicide, and I'm grateful that I made it, that I'm alive. I live with lasting injuries from decades of domestic violence, vicious violence, and I think the greatest gift that I gave myself was in '97. My children then were 13, 11, and 8. And that's when I saw the signs of how the relationship, the marriage I was in, was affecting my children because of my tolerances. So I had no option. It was, I had to get out. I didn't want my kids growing up learning those same things or having to experience anything similar. When you think about kids in homes of domestic violence, they hear all that all night long, and how can they concentrate on homework? How can they do this? How can they do that? And then the next morning, they got to get up and get ready and go to school and go face their friends and their classes just like they would any other day. If you are going through sexual abuse or exploitation or trafficking, how in the world are you supposed to stand up there and tell the teacher why you didn't get your homework done?
Right.
Or why you're failing all your classes, or why you are angry today, or why you're sad today, or why you're filthy today. So,
and you bring up in this just last few sentences the importance of carried trauma from your childhood to your adulthood to fear of your children's lives. And that's something that I think that needs to kind of be looked at a little bit more. It's not just how you were affected at an age. This is carried a long way.
Yes, absolutely. It becomes ingrained. When your environment is so day-to-day, as we often know, these environments can be very traumatic. It becomes secondary behavior. It becomes your normal. You don't know you feel uncomfortable walking into those homes that are healthy and happy, and families are doing movie night and popcorn night, and you're thinking, oh my goodness gracious, I mean, it twists up our thinking and our perceptions and our choices. And, sure, when we are adults, there's only so much of our actions that we can look back and blame our parents for. And at some time, we all have to grow up and say, okay, I'm in charge now. And especially if we have kids, we've got to say, no, I'm in charge of them too. So how do we want the influence to be passed down on them? Do we want to help protect them and change that for them, which means healing ourselves and really taking a hard look at our own behaviors? Or do we want to continue to let this cycle keep going? I choose to make it stop. And, thankfully my family is now seeing a generation that is making it stop. And that's the best thing I could ask for.
Absolutely. That can't be an easy transition. The making it stop and the healing process that goes with that. We spoke the other day, and I don't remember the acronym that you used about the therapy that the woman...
EMDR.
EMDR. Can you speak to a little bit of EMDR?
I only know the surface of EMDR. It's rapid eye movement. And Stephanie Altizer with SAFE is the person that I learned about this from. And the way that she had put it was, they're having such huge success with this. Vets coming back from Afghanistan and from Iraq are being treated in sometimes 6 to 12 sessions, and they're done. Their trauma is gone. PTSD is gone. Now they're having that same success rate with sexual assault and trafficking and trauma survivors. That is incredible, because when you carry that burden for a lifetime, it's like all of these, I always say that it's like these really heavy bricks that other people have shaped and molded and just stacked on your back. And we're the ones stuck carrying them around.
Yeah.
Other people don't see them. We get all weighted down by them. And I think that our recovery is a process of just trying to figure out how to put those bricks down one by one, or give them back to the person that deserves to be carrying them.
And you bring up combat vets.
Yes.
Because the trauma with sexual abuse and long-term sexual abuse is the same as, if not greater, as studies have proven,
yes,
than as a combat veteran, as being
yes.
in direct combat for constant.
CDC and PTSD.gov both have information on that long-term, especially in human trafficking situations, long-term grievous harm and threat, living under that kind of dominance and control, that kind of trauma can only be compared to that of concentration camp survivors. Mm-hmm. And that is, I hope that people who are still survivors of World War II who were in those concentration camps, and our vets understand that, I know that you were in a battle that you couldn't do anything about. Some of those battles, our soldiers, they have helmets and they have weapons and they have bulletproof vests. It's much like talking about the concussion syndrome, where football players have helmets and all of this other gear. But when you have people at home that are being beaten, and the head is typically one of the major portions of the body that is hurt during domestic violence or any kind of violent attack, those concussions repeated, there's no helmet protecting you. So that ends up, is that connected to early onset Alzheimer's or dementia or other syndromes? I know I'm having memory problems now, but that comes with age. But yeah, there's so many underlying issues. Substance abuse and mental illness are two of the top because those are our coping strategies, and that's how we end up developing a dissociative personalities and borderline personalities where we have to be someone else in this setting or in this setting to make ourselves feel comfortable and acceptable. Drug addictions help us do that or help calm the thoughts. So it's not uncommon, but I think recovery, there's no one right way to go through recovery. It's as independent as the trauma itself that the person went through. So you have to choose what works best for you, but I always suggest not just peer support, but wraparound support for the family. Let's make it a family affair to get better and look at life in a more positive, happier, healthier way.
Right. Over the next few months, we'll also be probably bringing you back, but speaking with people from SAFE and speaking with people from SWAN and hopefully doing a few more interviews to dig into what's available in our community, what's available in our area, the resources that people can turn to if they see something or if they need something. I want to take a few questions.
Sure, please.
But I want to ask you first, if somebody were to say to you, hey, I know something, the old you, back in the trauma, hey, I don't know if your situation is safe. Is there anything I can do? Would you have taken that?
I always like to say that, what made me decide to become an advocate was the fact that I started looking back and, again, that little piece of anger about what was about those that didn't say anything. So I questioned, what if one person would have asked? Would I have been brave enough? I know that with the horrible neglect and stench and filth, I know that they could have charged neglect very easily and gotten me out of there and gotten me started. Problem was that services back then, I don't think that they would have known how do you verbalize those kinds of acts. So it takes time. With the more skills and education and knowledge that we have today and the trainings that are available, our therapists are so much more prepared to dig deep and help you dig deep and come out of on the other side. For recovery, a lot of people are afraid to face recovery because of all the darkness that surrounds that issue. If you're using NA kind of program, it's a 12-step and acceptance and making amends. Who do you have to make an amends to? These acts happen to you.
Right.
This is a different kind of recovery. And second of all, it's so, we all feel differently about it and are affected differently about it. And things can come up at any time. So really believing in yourself, believing that you matter, believing that what happened was wrong is very important. And allowing yourself to, unfortunately, yes, face those ugly fears, but remember that they're only memories now.
That's important.
They're just memories. Like taking a walk on a beach or going to see your favorite high school friend, those are only memories now.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have as much power over you. And the less power we can give them, the more power we take back in that.
Absolutely.
So,
Let's see what a few people have been asking here. If you have a question, please feel free to leave in the comments your question. Let me get to these. Prima has a question for you. And you kind of covered it a little bit. Her question was, that moment, what was that moment? And you don't have to be specific. That was there a person, an aha moment? What was it that made you say, oh,
this is it.
This is it.
Okay. My then second husband, who was a very violent drunk, who grew up watching his very violent drunk father beat his mother and his siblings and himself. It was an intergenerational thing, and this is who he was. When my children started getting affected by this, and when I started recognizing this, my aha moment was he had come home. I had always prepared his dinner plate, and because I had to feed the kids, get them to bed. So the kids were eating. He walks in the door. I take him his plate goes across the room. I go to clean it up, and suddenly I'm grabbed by my hair, and then as my kids are eating dinner, they're witnessing another beating of Mom. And when I finally he lets go of me, and I'm trying to clean up the mess, and I get up and I turn to the kitchen table. When I used to take my kids grocery shopping, if they were all good, because I had 3, if they were all good, they got a quarter for the gumball machine, so they could get a little something. Well, my son that day at the grocery store got himself a little 1-inch plastic gumball machine knife. And it was just a little pocket knife, wouldn't have cut butter, I don't think. But my son looked at me, and he reached into his pocket, and he pulled out that little bitty knife, and he said, "Don't you worry, Mom, next time I got him." And that was a moment like none other. It was like a brick upside the head of, oh my goodness gracious, what is happening? And when we got out, I found out that when the fights would go on in the middle of the night and my kids were upstairs, my son would actually hide my girls in the bedroom closet and stand warrior pose outside of it. He was just a little boy, but he took on that burden. We don't know what our kids hear and see and feel, because when those types of environments are going on, the kids don't have to technically be in the home or in the same room to experience that fear and that harm, or to know that something's wrong.
Sure. And no matter what, your children have that loyalty to you, which I think it makes it really hard for someone like you as you were growing up. Did you have that loyalty to your parents of all?
I was obligated to my mother.
Sure.
I was at 5 when my stepfather came into my life. I was completely ripped away from ever seeing my real father or my real grandparents and family ever again. So I was very dependent upon my mom. I craved my mother's approval and love, and so many burdens, and I would far exceed and became so severely OCD in the way I kept the house and scrubbing with a toothbrush and everything spit, shine, polished, care and nurture and make sure that nothing was disrupted. I learned that very, very early. And I think, even up into after I left my second husband and bought a house for my kids and I that we could call our own safe haven home. And I was so proud of myself, ecstatic. I bought my own car. I bought us our first house. And we were happy. It was our safe haven. And I can remember calling my mother and being so ecstatic. And unfortunately, my mother answered the phone and said, "Don't worry, Teresa Ann, you're going to screw it all up anyway." And that was it. And when I moved back to Illinois in '02, I wanted very much to reconnect. And unfortunately, I did a little short stay thinking things would be okay. I'm 40 years old now. I can stay a couple of weeks with my mother until I get on my feet. Well, that didn't work out so well because the predatory stepfather, who she insisted would never ever dream or could not even physically get downstairs to bother me in the shower. I'm taking a shower and I hear something and I pull the curtain back and there he is, just to show me that he could. And so, that's when I decided I was really, at 45, I was done with my mother. And I couldn't handle being around that. And thank goodness I lived in Pennsylvania and my kids did not have, because I did not want them close to my family.
Sure.
So.
Sure, that has to be concerning to
sure it
bring
is.
them around that
yes.
history of yours.
Especially, I had a boy and 2 girls, so, my greatest fear was no way. You're not being left alone with my kids. No, sorry, you're not getting, no, not gonna happen. I am a mama bear when it comes to my kids, so, we all are.
Anne asks, how can we best educate vulnerable victims in our area, and who is best suited to do this education?
There are a lot of great educational programs now. Butterfly Dreams, we do education for healthcare engagement and law enforcement engagement, as well as social services and teachers. So we're gearing towards the people who are most likely to interact, especially with our kids. I think helping victims, now we have a STAR peer group that meets via Zoom now every Tuesday morning, 11 a.m. Central Time, and it's growing in numbers. We tried to get it going just before COVID. COVID shut us down like it did everyone. But now it's up and running online, and it's even better because not everyone's just from the immediate area. But we work with a proven program. It is the Survivor to Thriver program by ASCA Support, ASCAsupport.org. And it's free to work online, independently. It's a great self-help tool. But I believe in being able to search out self-help tools and give a lot of options, because your biggest work is going to come from what you do inside. We can control our mind more than we think. Although there may be a lot of negative, and the negative thoughts are somehow, they have more power than our positive thoughts. When a negative thought comes in, we can choose where we want our brains to go. So even though it may take us 5 or 10 minutes to dig deep and find something positive, let that positive come to the surface. And the more you get in the habit of doing that, the easier it'll become. But anyone that is looking for help can reach me on Facebook on Butterfly Dreams Alliance, or give me a text at 618-304-7438.
We can drop all this information
Yes,
too
yes.
in the comments to the live, so that they can resource that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no
Thank
problem.
you. Yes. But I think it's important. I mean, we've got some really great services here, like you said. They all know how important that relationship is. And the more relationship and trust we can give that person reaching out to us, and just be a listening ear to kind of help give them some guidance, I think is a great, it's better than where they were 5 minutes ago.
Absolutely.
And if we can get better than 5 minutes ago, we get through another 5 minutes. Because sometimes when you're facing a whole lot of trauma, as I learned from my own experience, sometimes all you can do is just go from one to the other, and your head starts swirling with so much negativity. It's really difficult. Sometimes those emotions need to come out. You will cry, you will scream, it's okay. You're angry, you're hurt. It's gonna happen. But more than anything, you deserve it. And I can't say that enough. No matter how difficult it was, once I got through it, I'm happy. I'm good. I've got a good life. My kids, we've got a great relationship. So I love what I do. I love the future of where that's going. So I'm good. I'm better now than I've been ever. So I'm good.
Do you feel like your advocacy and your, being a support resource is a big part of that healing?
Yes, much so.
I hear that from you when we speak.
Writing My Justice was such a huge part of my beginning.
Which is your book.
Yes. And I had to put myself back in that place to be able to go and face that. And it was very cathartic for me because it was an event by event, good and bad, starting with my favorite memory as a kid and working my way through to the man who came into my life and has been there with me to walk this journey with me and supports me as an advocate and knows how much I care about helping other people. So I am blessed. The amazing people that are on our board of directors, we did a Facebook Live last night and they introduced themselves. It's on our Butterfly Dreams page.
We shared that as well.
Yes,
so yeah,
thank you.
We can resource that.
Yes, indeed.
Tell me about your board of directors because they are a really amazing
They're phenomenal,
group of
and
individuals.
I'm so proud of them. Beginning with Lori Risnick, who is actually an associate professor and co-founder of the PA program down at SIU Carbondale School of Medicine, and her PA students not only learn a prevention and assisting and spotting human trafficking victims, but Lori has spoken regionally, nationally, and in Switzerland to provide training on this topic. She's highly knowledgeable. Kimberly Palermo started off with her master's in trauma recovery 8 years ago or 10 years ago, while as a Paul Simon Public Policy Institute scholar. The people that developed the recovery program that I used had actually reached out for help, and fast forward 8 years when I met Kimberly and she wanted to know about the Survivor Peer program that I do. I'm like, well, this is the material, and she's looking at me and she says, oh, I wrote that. And I'm like, no way, do you know how many people you're helping with this? She's now out of trauma recovery. I mean, of course, still having all of her skills, but she now is in Illinois policy. Then we have Lisa Wingert, who is on rural services, rural development and social services with SIU School of Medicine, and she is also on the National Drug Endangered Children's Alliance, and they're really now focusing on a collaboration between the drug endangered children and family facilitated trafficking because they found such a huge link. Those 65% of moms who did traffic their kids, it was found that the biggest offer of payment was drugs, or for the supply of drugs, or for family survival. Those are the two factors. So then we have Tracy Carney, and she has a 30-year career in education, and she used to be on the teaching and learning faculty over in Lindenwood University. Now she's at SIUE, and she is our education outreach director. She contacts all the schools and set up our educators program, educating the educators, human trafficking and abuse. And then we have an attorney in Beckemeyer who actually ran for state's attorney, but didn't make it in there. Janice Pulver, I've known her for about 5 years. She was the very first person I reached out to when I decided I wanted to create a nonprofit, and she has supported me ever since our very first meeting. She's a great friend, and she's our vice president. So I do believe, yes, I think that's everyone now. So, but they are phenomenal in their own individual professions. So to have them sit with me and on our board and invite me to do trainings with them. And we give CEUs and CMEs, and we are qualified, we are skilled, we do trainings, but we love doing community venues at the same time. We love going out for that quick 15 minutes to talk to law enforcement, or to talk to a school, or to talk to churches and groups, whoever will listen. We've got a lot to say that I hope I look at 3 terms: engage, inform, and inspire. So if we can do that, hopefully the next generation, as we protect our teens and preteens, because right now they're doing everything online.
Yeah.
So much more vulnerable.
Yeah.
We didn't have that problem. I know I certainly didn't, and I don't know about you, but I know that my kids were just getting familiar with Mac programs back in the day. The internet had not fully been developed to be what it is today, and social media most certainly not. This is a whole different spectrum. I don't care what app, what game your child is using, or how old they are, there is a risk of a predator. And right now that they know that kids are online more than anything else, they are snooping and lurking and watching for a way that they can lure a kid who's maybe hurting because of something going on in their home or in their relationships with others, and they're looking in desperation to have a friend, and they can be lured in so easily because, teens are naive.
And this is a really kind of a segue to a really great question that Emily had. Do you know if the educators in our school systems receive any training on noticing abuse and what to do about it?
They do receive right now a minimal, basic, this is child abuse. If you see bruises and these, yes. And as mandatory reporters, you have to call DCFS. Well, the key factors, again, DCFS, law enforcement in this room sitting there, and then this other woman came in and she was with DCFS, and it's like, well, that's rather a little bit cold. I think we can do a little bit better. But yes, we have an Educating the Educators program, which we did at O'Fallon Township High School to approximately 100 teachers. It was Tracy Carney and I who did it, and it was phenomenal. We had such great reviews from them about it, and the discussion material, it actually took a couple of hours to get through it.
Do you offer that?
Yes,
at
free
schools?
Of charge to the schools. Right now schools are overwhelmed with this whole pandemic and e-learning. End Demand Illinois from CASE up in Chicago, which is the Chicago Alliance Against Sexual Exploitation, and they write up a lot of our formal wording policies for the state of Illinois. They have developed this End Demand Illinois program, which is geared towards teens, and teaching them respectful relationships and about consent, and changing that media influenced, sexualized, fly girl behavior of our young girls, and abusive and disrespectful behavior from our guys. So trying to create that sense of equality and safety and just basic human rights to decency in life and safety is important. We want to have our kids learn. Our Safe Teens program actually focuses on those same issues, but we talk to them about using their buddy skills. Those buddy skills they learned back in kindergarten. Okay, always go in pairs, that kind of thing. Well, it goes even farther. Don't share anything online. If it's shared online, it's permanent. It's going to be there forever. No personal information. But when you're out in your social circles, as you become teenagers and you get out and about, watch out for each other. Don't go off alone. There was a pimp in the local area, and I believe it was East St. Louis. I may be wrong, but he would actually go to football games and see who was standing along the fence, not sitting in the bleachers with everyone. And then go up to them and, hey, you want to go party? And of course, well, yeah, we're bored with this, and well, you got beer, and I got, a little bit of marijuana, so, and that's how he would pull them away and then pull them in. And then once one favor was done, then they were indebted.
That's what a lot of this, and we could
Yes.
unpack that specific thing for an hour or
Yes.
so. Like once
Yes.
once you're in, how do they why doesn't somebody recognize to leave? And that's a whole nother.
That's that survival mentality. That's that trauma bond. That's that, they tell me that they love me and they do these things for me. And I know a lot of times, like whenever I was leaving my parents' home, I had such a hero complex. I wanted someone to come rescue me and someone to give me a chance to have a better life. So I fell for that I love you. And when you think about the words I love you, if you love me, you will.
Right.
Have to be the most powerful words. And as our teenagers are developing relationships in high school, they're following the groundwork set by their home environment. So do we want our kids, say your kids come from the great background and have never been harmed and you don't want them harmed. So do we want them falling vulnerable to those words and being lured or harmed as a result of those words? Or do we want to empower them to know these things are wrong, and if you love me, you wouldn't ask me to do them?
Right. And you speak of the buddy system, and it really drives home to me because I have a young woman daughter and a teenage daughter, a young adult and a teenage daughter. And I'm thinking of her feeling as though that, we've raised her very in a safe environment,
Sure.
but that she's aware for her friends.
Right.
That she can identify, she can
I love
identify
that.
something in someone else's home. So.
And then she can bring that back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And you and her have an open enough relationship that
Hopefully.
she can talk to you about it. And that's what we want to do. Teens really will watch out for their families and their friends and even in their community if we let them know that, number one, we believe them, and number two, we will help them.
Yeah.
If they know that they've got those things on their side, they will be so proactive in this. And they're going to be the ones that are going to make the really big difference moving forward.
I cannot thank you enough. And we could have this 1 hour interview last us, especially you and I. We could last 3 hours, and we could, order us a pizza and come back here.
Oh, goodness, yes.
But I know there's going to be people watching it a little bit later, and I know we covered a lot of different entities that offer support and offer advocacy and help. So we'll drop that in there. And if anybody has any questions going forward as you're watching this tomorrow or as you think about it, in a week from now, come back, drop the comment. I'm monitoring the comments, and I try to get all the information to you in that section. So I want to thank everybody. I especially want to thank you, Trish. This has been such an honor for me to sit with you in person finally, with my friends. And like the page on Facebook. We have the third of the series coming up next Wednesday at 6:30, same bat time, same bat channel, with Annie Shoemaker. So I'm looking forward to speaking with her about what she does as an advocate. And
they have a full shelter service and recovery program, and Annie is phenomenal, and Eden's Glory is one of the go-tos. I could sit here and name off hundreds, but it's important that you get the local ones out here because yes, in our little rural area piece of the world, we have and that's one of our biggest problems is so few resources and lack of funding to do the real work that kind of cuts off at the St. Clair-Madison County line. And now this year is going to be even difficult because even more programs are being cut and funding is being cut back. But the Center for Prevention of Abuse just was awarded a huge grant to work on the Central Illinois Human Trafficking Task Force, which myself and Kimberly Palermo and Lori Risnick, we are all individual members of, in addition to U.S. Attorney General's Office and state police and so many other resources spanning throughout Illinois that are part of that team. And, if there's something that I don't know or something that I can't find or that I'm not sure of, I know that I've got networks stemming from down in Carbondale and Harrisburg all the way up to Peoria and beyond that I can reach out to help people find what they need. So We are always here, but more importantly, I encourage everyone to, if you're looking and if you're curious, Google the hotlines in your area. I know hotlines can be rather cold to call, but at night, whenever you don't have someone to talk to, they may be that lifeline for you. As I said, I attempted suicide. I was 23, and it was my little girl's cry that pulled me back into reality, and eventually saved my life. But we don't want folks to get too lost in this. We want to reach out our hands and pull people up above this.
And bring more people into the awareness that
Yes.
that
That they can do that even more so. And that's what I meant, all of us reaching out our hands and just lifting people up through this, because it doesn't have to be your only identity. Just because of what happened to me does not make me just a survivor identity. I'm a businesswoman and I'm an advocate, but I'm a mom and a partner and a friend, and so many other parts of us, right?
Yes.
Everyone has so many levels and different parts. So those are the parts we want, the good stuff.
Thank you again.